thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness hast appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men and women, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us, thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in these islands. Let thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and those whose interest thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ's sake. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Morning, members. House is now in session. Members, the minutes of the 28th of June have been circulated. Are there any amendments required? There are none. The minutes will be confirmed as printed. Messengers from the governor? There are none. Announcements by the speaker? We've been informed that the following members will be absent today: MP Jamal Simmons, MP Renee Mean, and MP Kim Swan. Also, members, on your desk, each of you should see a nice pink pin. These are from the Olympic Association. As our team prepares to go off and represent Bermuda at this year's Olympics, the Olympic Association have sent us pins for each member here to proudly display as you move around the community seeking support for our athletes as they're out there representing us in this year's games. We continue to wish them well and look forward to much support from our community as those young people do their best on behalf of Bermuda. Messengers from the Senate? There are none. Papers and other communications? There are two such papers this morning. Name of the minister, both in the name of the Minister of Finance. Premier?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the audited financial statement of the Office of the Information Commissioner, ICO, for the fiscal year ending 31st of March 2022. Mr. Speaker, I also have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Bermuda Monetary Authority Annual Report 2023. This report is submitted in accordance with Section 28.2 of the Bermuda Monetary Authority Act 1969.
Thank you, Premier. Petitions? There are none. Statements by ministers and junior ministers? There are 8 such statements this morning. The first is in the name of the Premier, Minister of Finance. Premier, would you like to present your statement at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate your indulgence for the presentation of this statement. Mr. Speaker, honorable members come to this honorable house this week with a heavy heart. This week, tragic events have shaken our island, leaving many of us with a deep feeling of sorrow and disbelief. The senseless killings of Miss Deontay Trim, a mother of 5, and the heart-wrenching news of the passing of Ron Trim, Nicole Parfit, and their children, Drei and Navi, over the weekend, and the shooting deaths of 2 young men in the early hours of Wednesday morning have cast a shadow of grief over our island that weighs heavily on our minds and our hearts. Mr. Speaker, these recent tragedies have struck at the very core of so many families and friends, and their pain has reverberated throughout the entire island. Mr. Speaker, we are all hurting with them, and I'm sure I speak for all honorable members of this House. Bermuda is a small island with a closely connected community where we are all intrinsically linked. When one family or sector of the community is hurting, we all feel it. Mr. Speaker, as a father, I can only begin to imagine the pain that the mothers and fathers feel as they mourn the loss of their sons, young men with so much potential, and daughters who were taken far too soon. And I'm deeply saddened at the thought of those children who have been left to navigate life without the love and guidance of their mother, and the uncles, aunts, and grandparents who experienced the pain of losing family and grandchildren who they have loved and nurtured. Mr. Speaker, in these dark times, all Bermudians must continue to work hand in hand towards a more hopeful future for our island. And we must not allow Bermuda to be defined by these tragedies, but how we, as Bermudians and as one community, respond to them and to one another. Mr. Speaker, our first priority must be to support those directly impacted by these devastating events. The losses that some families in our community have had to endure are unimaginable, and it is in these moments that we must provide them with compassion, empathy, and support that will help them in their time of grief and demonstrate to them that they are not alone. Mr. Speaker, I also want to reassure every Bermudian that their elected government is committed to working with Government House, which is responsible for the Bermuda Police Service, to ensure the safety and well-being of our residents. We understand the anxiety and fear that these events have caused. Outside of policing, this government remains committed to investing in resources and programs to address the root cause of the issues that our communities face. We know that the people of Bermuda do not want words or thoughts and prayers alone, but want action that will lead to progress. Mr. Speaker, as Minister of Finance, I am committed to ensuring that additional resources are allocated to support any further initiatives that will assist in breaking the cycle of violence plaguing our island. When the police asked for more resources, we provided them. When there was a call for more investment in mental health, we provided it. When there was a call for more support for community activities for young people and support for positive activities, we provided it. But, Mr. Speaker, the recent tragedies have shown that even more needs to be invested in tackling the root cause of violence, and this government will not ignore this reality and will continue to do its part. But, Mr. Speaker, the government cannot do this alone. We need strength and unity from all of Bermuda working together. This is not the time to point fingers or play politics, but for those of us who serve the public to be resolute in imploring Bermudians to stop turning a blind eye to the antisocial behavior in our communities. Mr. Speaker, I must also plead with the parents of Bermuda and remind them that they are not alone. We know when there are signs that our children may not be on the right path, but sometimes we want to deny that it is our child. Parents, please know that help is available. Please let the helping agencies assist with the intervention efforts that have diverted many of our young people from a negative path. I thank the local faith leaders, community leaders, charity leaders, sports club leaders, and others who have already been vocal in their prayers for our island, visible in support of the families and in their calls for us to show compassion and solidarity. They have done so while encouraging us to use the hurt we collectively feel as a reminder that we must redouble our efforts for positive change. Mr. Speaker, there have been an outpouring of prayers, kind words, and calls for our community to come together, whether on the Cabinet lawn, in the places of worship, or online. The people of Bermuda are calling for unity, and I encourage us all not to lose that energy and mentality that we must work together to overcome this. And, Mr. Speaker, the truth is that all families and residents are impacted by violence on our island. Though the results of the violence mainly impact Bermuda's Black community, there is an imperative for persons from all sectors to ensure that they are playing their part to support positive outcomes for young people. Mr. Speaker, the culture of silence that prevails in some parts of Bermuda and the view that it is another community's problem are not what this island needs. It will not help the Bermuda Police Service solve cases, which may help to bring some form of closure to the families of those taken so soon. The police have a difficult job to do, but it is made easier when they have support and cooperation from the public. Mr. Speaker, it is only through community participation and collaboration that we can make progress, save more young people, and bring us to a place where we want our island home to be. We must work together to prevent more families from having to endure this pain, to find the strength to heal, to implement policies that honors those we've lost, and to build a safer Bermuda and a brighter future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. The second statement is also in your name. Would you like to see it with that one?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning in this honorable House to announce that beginning April 1st, 2025, thanks to the collaborative efforts of the government, the Pension Commission, and local pension plan administrators, the people of Bermuda will benefit not only from a reduction in administration fees applied to private pension, but will also see limits placed on those fees so they do not increase in the future. Mr. Speaker, this government believes every hard-earned dollar in your private pension should be protected. With an aging population and people living longer, the government felt it incumbent to put forward initiatives that better secure the financial future of our workers and best prepare them for retirement. Mr. Speaker, the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act 1998 through the National Pension Scheme General Regulations 1999 currently allow plan administrators to charge fees and expenses for the administration of pension plans. However, there are currently no limitations on the amount or rates that can be charged. In December 2019, Section 69 of the Act was amended to empower the Minister of Finance to prescribe maximum fees payable for pension plan administration. Mr. Speaker, following a comprehensive review by the Pension Commission in 2021, and with the assistance of a leading Canadian pension consultancy firm, it has become clear that there is significant variability in the fees paid by plan members in defined contribution plans, which with some fees as high as 4.2%. Mr. Speaker, recognizing the significant impact that higher fees can have on the final pension balances accumulated by Bermudians, we have taken steps to address this issue. Therefore, as of April 1st, 2025, the Ministry of Finance will implement limitations or caps on plan administration fees, which will result in substantial benefits for pension plan members, leading to larger amounts that Bermudians will have to support their retirement. These recommendations include, for those in defined contribution employer pension plans, also known as group retirement plans, the fees should not exceed 1.25% per year for members with balances over $50,000, 0.75% per year for balances between $25,000 and $50,000, and 0.5% per year for balances less than $25,000. Similarly, for those with individual local retirement plans, the fees should not exceed 1% per year with balances over $50,000, 0.75% per year for balances between $25,000 and $50,000, and 0.5% per year for those balances of less than $25,000. Mr. Speaker, other changes will require pension plan administrators to include lower cost investment options, such as index funds in their range of investments, and also prohibiting an administrator from receiving advisory fees on any investment funds offered to plan members. Mr. Speaker, with these changes, it is estimated that the average annual savings for individuals with balances over $50,000 will be $725, and with projected interest rates will amount to over $75,000 in additional funds for retirement over a 40-year employment cycle. For members with smaller balances, the average annual savings are estimated at $125, totaling over $14,000 in the same period. Mr. Speaker, this initiative is a clear example of our government's dedication to safeguarding the financial well-being of our people. By limiting the administration fees deducted from their pension funds, we are ensuring that more of their hard-earned money is preserved for their future benefit, helping to secure a safer and more prosperous retirement. Mr. Speaker, as I close, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank those within the Ministry of Finance, the Pension Commission, and our local pension plan administrators for their hard work and feedback, and the government looks forward to working with them in the future to continue to develop policies aimed at ensuring that the workers of Bermuda are retirement ready. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Premier. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Works. Minister?
Good morning, Mr.
Good
Speaker.
morning.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to remind us all that the Tynes Bay Waste to Energy facility remains at a critical point and that the Ministry of Public Works continues its efforts to address the current state of affairs. Mr. Speaker, you will recall back in December 2021, the island was facing a crisis with waste disposal. The full shutdown of the Tynes Bay facility due to boiler failures and the untimely failure of the baling contingency system meant the island unfortunately had to resort to landfilling for a period of 7 days. Fortunately, with the assistance of the world-class engineers at the facility, in the weeks that followed, the boilers were brought back online and the bales from the contingency system were returned to the plant for incineration. Mr. Speaker, the Tynes Bay Waste-to-Energy facility is integral to the management of the waste the island produces. Before 1994, Bermuda's garbage was dumped in landfills, most notably the Marsh Folly site in Pembroke, and this government has committed never to returning to landfilling again. This is why, shortly after the facility's failure in late 2021, Mr. Speaker, the following February, the government announced a capital program for the refurbishment of Tynes Bay and the commencement of said program to ensure that we can continue to dispose of the island's waste in an environmentally friendly manner. Mr. Speaker, this program will see the complete retrofit of the waste processing facility. However, the challenges have arisen with this initiative. Namely, there have been significant delays in product delivery times attributed to global supply chain issues resulting from the fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic and ensuing economic climate, causing the timeline for the refurbishment initiative to be extended, which has increased the risk for catastrophic failure. Mr. Speaker, this is not new information to members. I explained the circumstances as they were occurring and the ministry's efforts to avoid the risks in a statement to this Honorable House on September 30th, 2022. Further, in said statement, I detailed that the Cabinet authorized a stabilization program of projects that focuses on replacing critical systems to preserve the facility until major maintenance can begin at the estimated cost of $22 million. Mr. Speaker, these projects specifically targeted failed or obsolete systems that can be replaced without major disruption to the daily operations at Tynes Bay, and that will also be integrated into the overall refurbishment works to avoid wasted expenditure. These upgraded systems are intended to assimilate seamlessly with the larger refurbishment works once they commence. Again, this information was shared some 2 years ago, and now, Mr. Speaker, I intend to update on some of the works completed under the stabilization program. 1. The replacement of 2 overhead refuse cranes. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues may recall that in the aforementioned statement, I announced that there was a catastrophic failure of one of the 2 overhead refuse cranes, which happened in April 2022. During normal operation of the crane, the entire hoist and access platform collapsed as the support wells failed due to excessive fatigue. It was decided by management to take on the risk of running the facility with only 1 crane for an extended period with no operational redundancy. Mr. Speaker, therefore, the replacement of both cranes was deemed a priority under this program. As such, in March 2023, the Cabinet authorized the purchase of 2 overhead refuse cranes and 4 refuse grapples complete with their control systems from Cone Cranes America Limited at the sum of $4,259,971. After a successful open procurement for a replacement clinker crane in 2021, which is used for the ash the facility produces, by Cone Cranes America Limited, it was decided to standardize all cranes with the same manufacturer, as the facility's maintenance teams have become familiar with these systems over the years. By selecting this company, technician training can focus on the differences in the upgraded systems and reinforce the common system knowledge which occurs from standardization of the crane manufacturer. Simply put, the teams are used to maintaining equipment from the company, and as the old adage goes, it is best to stick with what you know. Mr. Speaker, we were advised that the new overhead refuse cranes would take 6 months to design and another 12 months to manufacture. They were ordered in January 2023 and arrived 3 months early in April 2024. Mr. Speaker, to install the new cranes, a separate request for proposal was issued and the contract subsequently awarded to the local company BCM Construction Limited, the sole bidder, in the amount of $1,489,819. Mr. Speaker, it is anticipated that the new cranes will be fully installed by August, then undergo a 2-month commissioning period, and subsequently be fully turned over to Tynes Bay in October. 2. The refurbishment of the plant distribution transformers. Mr. Speaker, another project identified as a priority was the refurbishment of the facility's distribution transformers. As such, an open request for proposals was issued in March 2023 to seek qualified contractors that can complete the work. After a successful procurement process, the contract was awarded to another local firm, BAC Universal Limited, the lowest bidder, at the cost of $257,040. Mr. Speaker, the transformers have been manufactured and will be released for shipment sometime next week. Installation works will commence upon arrival, with the project slated to be complete by the end of September. 3. Turbine overhaul. Mr. Speaker, not to get too technical for this project, as I am not an engineer, but the Tynes Bay plant utilizes 2 steam turbines coupled with a generator to transform the energy released from the burning of refuse in the incinerator into electrical energy. This electrical energy supplies both the plant itself and a reverse osmosis plant, with the surplus energy being sold to the Belco power grid. The equipment associated with the primary T2 turbine was installed and commissioned over 5 years ago and is due for a major overhaul to maintain safe and efficient operating conditions. A contract for this work was awarded to Siemens Energy AG, who are the original equipment manufacturer, at the sum of $1,540,000. As the turbines are critical for both the successful operation and safety of the facility, it is essential to source any works and replacement components from the company. Mr. Speaker, currently Siemens Energy is working with management at Tynes Bay to ensure that all elements needed are on island and ready for project kickoff in November. 4. The replacement of the van screens. Mr. Speaker, another priority project is the replacement of 2 traveling band screens at the facility's seawater screening plant. These band screens, which are over 30 years old, remove debris from seawater before it is pumped to the cooling system for the turbine. Failing to remove debris can lead to damage to the pumps, valves, or pipework of the system. After an open procurement process which resulted in only a single bid for the works, a contract was approved with the local company H&H Plumbing and Mechanical Limited at the sum of $914,349. Currently, the required equipment is being manufactured, with physical work slated to take place in the first quarter of 2025. Mr. Speaker, this government is committed to our local companies, and this is demonstrated by seeking qualified contractors for works that are not extremely specialized in nature. Of the 4 projects I've mentioned, 2 are being performed by local companies whom we have the utmost confidence can deliver. But, Mr. Speaker, these are not the only projects happening simultaneously regarding Tynes Bay. As I've said before, the facility is integral to the management of the waste the island produces. Without it, we will be landfilling all of our waste, contrary to best practice and the wishes of the Bermudian people. We have learned from the situation which occurred in late 2021, which was a direct result of the lack of funding for adequate maintenance. And I stress again that we cannot return to landfilling as the primary form of waste disposal. This is why, Mr. Speaker, in February 2023, this government commissioned a business case study for the full redevelopment of the Tynes Bay Waste to Energy facility. This study, which was performed by KPMG, will define the scope of redevelopment and associated costs for the complete refurbishment of the plant. Further, it performed a comprehensive examination and comparison of various facility business models with associated funding mechanisms to achieve the goal of continued solid waste disposal through the redevelopment of the Tynes Bay Waste to Energy facility. The business case has considered not only the financial elements of the current business model versus alternatives, but also takes into account the government's will for economic recovery and growth potential, including synergies with government services such as waste management, water production, and sewage treatment, amongst others. Mr. Speaker, KPMG, in collaboration with the expertise of key technical officers, has completed its initial study and has provided a report to the government for consideration. Once a decision is made regarding this report, I will ensure the update the House accordingly. Mr. Speaker, I again want to stress in the strongest possible terms that the risk of a catastrophic failure is very real. The plant has a number of issues that threaten its functionality. Concurrent with the review and processing of the business case, pre-engineering planning expected to take 6 months is also being executed. The works currently underway by the phenomenal staff at the site and our industry partners are striving towards the immediate goal of stabilization, which will then give opportunity to focus on the larger refurbishment works that is far more complex. This government will continue to do all it can to ensure Bermuda's waste is properly disposed of while the necessary upgrades are underway. Mr. Speaker, back in 2021, we were on the edge of going over a cliff, but the stabilization works have prevented that from happening. The full refurbishment works must now proceed apace so that the country is never on that cliff edge again. All the plans are in place to move forward, and this will mean that the work must continue and the necessary funding over several years must be provided. Mr. Speaker, let me end by thanking the team at KPMG and our own in-house team of Permanent Secretary Kirk Outerbridge, Acting Chief Engineer J. Tarek Christopher, and Tynes Bay Waste to Energy Plant Manager Mr. Nasir Wade for the countless hours they committed to the production of the business case in addition to their day jobs. As always, Mr. Speaker, I will keep this House updated as we progress. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Education. Yes, National Security ahead of you on my form. Yeah, Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to update honorable colleagues and the listening audience on progress that we are making towards growing the number of learning partners to support the changes underway in our senior signature schools. Our signature schools, which was launched in September 2022, offer an opportunity for businesses, industry, and community organizations to become a learning partner to help shape Bermuda's young people and the country's future. Mr. Speaker, a key feature of senior signature schools is the opportunity for students to engage in authentic, real-world learning experiences that help them to develop industry-specific knowledge and skills to ensure our public education students develop the networks and relationships with those who bring them contacts and resources that can be valuable for in-school to work transitions. Mr. Speaker, it is of critical importance for Bermuda, as the OECD research shows that experiencing work-based learning as a senior or a high school student tends to be associated with higher wages and better life outcomes, with positive implications for society as well. However, according to OECD, analysis, which aligns with the anecdotal data here, less than 1/3 of young people have some experience with a meaningful work placement or internship by the age of 16. Addressing this, particularly for our public school students, is a goal this government remains steadfastly committed to. Mr. Speaker, last year we announced 7 learning partners who had signed memorandums of understanding during the 22-23 school year. These learning partners are BIOS, Bermuda Institute of Ocean Studies, Bermuda Zoological Society, BAMS, Bermuda Underwater Exploration Institute, BUEI, KPMG Bermuda, the Association of Bermuda International Companies, ABIC, Coombe Consulting Limited, and Belco. Mr. Speaker, at the time of that announcement, we were already seeing the benefits of these learning partnerships. Students enrolled in the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, or STEAM signature learning program at Cedar Bridge were experiencing STEM firsthand alongside experts in real-world professional environments, such as the Bermuda Aquarium Museum and Zoo in Flats. Thanks to BZS, who was working with school staff to co-deliver modules, including field investigations. In another partnership with ABIC, Bermuda Public School teachers delivering the Financial and Insurance Services Signature Learning Program at the Barclay Institute had the opportunity to receive industry-aligned professional learning focused on international business. Mr. Speaker, today I wish to highlight the new MOUs that have been signed for learning partnerships in 23-24 school year. The Ministry of Education, on behalf of the Bermuda Public School System, signed 4 MOUs with signature learning partners Paradise Mobile, Cambridge Breaches, BAC Group, and the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, or ACCA. Mr. Speaker, as a signature learning partner, the alliance with Paradise Mobile gives students access to advanced technology, creating a new wave of tech-smart entrepreneurs and innovators. This partnership will be part of the STEM signature learning program at Cedar Bridge Academy and the Financial and Insurance Services at the Barclay. The Paradise Mobile Learning Partnership provides possibilities for internships, career paths in STEM fields, and entrepreneurship in fintech. Starting in 2025, graduating students will have the opportunity to join accelerators and incubators, launching startups based on emerging technologies such as Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, all powered by Paradise Network. Mr. Speaker, the partnership with Cambridge Beaches, one of Bermuda's premier tourism establishments, will offer students the opportunity to interact with and learn from industry experts, helping them obtain relevant credentials in a supportive setting. This collaboration will be located at Sands Secondary Middle School, which will transform into Bermuda's 3rd signature senior school, delivering hospitality and tourism and educational services signature learning programs in September 2025. Mr. Speaker, as a new signature learning partner, the BAC Group will support the Barclay Institute with the Financial and Insurance Services Signature Learning Program, and will also support Cedar Bridge Academy with the engineering strand in the STEM Signature Learning Program and the Automotive Technology and Electrical strands in the Trades and Professions Signature Learning Program. Mr. Speaker, the final signature learning partner to mention is the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, or ACCA, who will work with the Barclay Institute, the Department of Education, Bermuda College, and CPA Bermuda on several key initiatives. 1, developing accounting education capacity. 2, growing the pool of local finance and accounting professionals in Bermuda. 3, supporting local talent hiring efforts. And 4, offering mentoring and workplace opportunities for students. The MOU signing brought ACCA's Foundations of Accountancy Qualification at RFQ, Regulated Qualifications Frameworks, Level 2 and 3, into the S3 and S4 curriculum. This initiative strengthens our educational programmings in accounting and finance within signature learning, and making Bermuda the first country in the region to launch this initiative. Mr. Speaker, learning partnerships show that we all have a role to play in educating Bermuda's learners. The Bermuda government wants to grow these key partnerships to make sure our students get the best education possible, including expanding into our parish primary schools, with a focus on exposure to signature learning opportunities and as a way of developing wraparound services for students and their families and building relationships with community members. Mr. Speaker, this government will continue to encourage and support more community and industry-based partners to commit to the children and young people of Bermuda, so that together we can give learners the tools they need to do well and prepare our young Bermudians to be competitive and innovative members of both the local and global community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning.
Morning.
Morning to you, my colleagues, and the listening audience. Mr. Speaker, today I stand before this honorable House, like most Bermudians, with a heavy heart, deeply disturbed and disgusted by the recent surge in violence that has shaken our island. To hear the news that 2 young men were fatally shot near Fort Scar in Somerset at such an early hour on Wednesday shook me to my core. These gruesome murders brought the number of homicides in Bermuda in the past 6 weeks to 6. 6 murders, Mr. Speaker, in 6 weeks. These include the shocking discovery of 4 lifeless people inside their home in Pembroke, which occurred a month after a mother was fatally shot in her home at the same property, a home located within my own constituency. This is a closely knit community, like so many neighborhoods throughout our country, and they are reeling from this horrific event. I also draw your attention to the murder at Knife Point on our famous Horseshoe Bay Beach on Bermuda Day. That was another senseless act of violence that snuffed out the hopes and dreams of a young man. Mr. Speaker, the murders at Scar Hill took place at a time when most of Bermuda was just waking up to face another day. Callously taking another person's life is abhorrent at any hour, but it is beyond incredible that someone could do such at such an early hour in the day. Irrespective of the circumstances that led to this appalling behavior, I can assure this honorable House and the rest of Bermuda that the Bermuda Police Service will aggressively pursue the culprits. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that these events have left our entire community in a state of pain, shock, and anxiety. I express my deepest sympathies to the families and loved ones of all those who have lost their lives recently. These senseless acts of violence have torn at the very fabric of our society, and we share in the grief and pain felt by those who knew and loved these individuals. My sincere thoughts and prayers are with our community during this incredibly difficult time. Mr. Speaker, as the Bermuda Police Service investigates these incidents, I want to assure the public that the Ministry of National Security fully supports their efforts. The Bermuda Police Service has our full backing, including whatever resources they may require to bring to justice those who are responsible. However, Mr. Speaker, we cannot do this alone. We need the community's help. I have said this oft times before, but the message must be repeated at this crucial time. If you have any information, no matter how insignificant you think it may be, you must do the right thing and come forward. I know that this is not easy to do, but your courage can make a difference, not just in solving these murders, but for the long-term safety of your family, neighbors, and the rest of Bermuda. The police service cannot solve these crimes without your support. No police service can. I understand the reluctance and fear that may exist within our community, but it is vital for the safety and well-being of all that we stand together against this violence. The resilience of the Bermudian people is well known, and now, more than ever, we must rely on that community strength to put an end to this scourge. Mr. Speaker, in order for us to wrestle this problem properly, we as a community, the whole village, including parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties, godparents, siblings, friends, neighbors, all of us must recognize that this is our problem and is ours to fix. Gone are the days when we can ignore what is going on in our neighborhoods and, yes, right in our own homes. I hasten to stress that no neighborhood, Mr. Speaker, is immune from this scourge and must therefore collectively take back our village. Only working together can we establish peace and harmony and ensure a healthy and safe future for our children and grandchildren who deserve to be raised in a safe environment. Mr. Speaker, we must break the silence and overcome the fear that prevents us from providing information that can assist in bringing the perpetrators of these heinous acts to justice. If you are hesitant to speak directly to the police, you can call the Confidential Crime Stoppers hotline at 800-8477. This hotline, Mr. Speaker, is located overseas, and it is anonymous, and it ensures your security. Mr. Speaker, I also echo the sentiments of the Honorable Premier and the Minister of Health when she speaks. For those who need grief counseling or are dealing directly with this trauma, to get the help they need, there are resources available, and we at the Ministry of National Security are available to assist as well. Our gang violence reduction team, in partnership with other agencies, is made up of trained counselors who are ready and able to offer guidance, assistance, and resources for those in need. Mr. Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to recognize the efforts of our essential service workers, including the Bermuda Fire and Rescue Service and the Bermuda Police Service. They have been under extreme duress on the front lines of these incidents. We know that theirs is a traumatic job when confronted with these incidents, and I thank them profusely for the manner in which they perform their duties. Their dedication and hard work do not go unnoticed and are deeply appreciated by all of Bermuda. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Health. Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to address a matter that has deeply affected our community. Bermuda is mourning the recent tragic losses that have touched us all. My heart aches as we reflect on the deaths that have occurred this week, and I'm deeply saddened and shocked by this news. As the Premier and the Minister of National Security have indicated, our country has been profoundly impacted by these tragic events. The pain we feel as a community is immense, and the mental and emotional well-being of our people has been profoundly shaken. In these difficult and testing times, we must pause, reflect, and support one another. If you or someone you know is struggling, please do not hesitate to seek help. We must be vigilant and compassionate, looking out for our neighbors, friends, and loved ones. Check in on each other, offer a listening ear, and pay attention to signs that someone may be struggling. Even a small gesture of kindness can make a significant difference in someone's life. Though these tragedies may not affect each of us directly, we are a close-knit community, and the ripples of these losses touch us all. Whether within your family, among friends, at church, or in your workplace, someone you know is grieving. Let us come together to support one another and prioritize our mental and emotional health. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health wants to reassure everyone that support is available for those who need it. If you are finding it hard to cope with these events or any mental health issues, please reach out to the following agencies. The Mid-Atlantic Wellness Institute, and their main line is 239-1111, which connects to a 24-hour mental health crisis line, or alternatively, Mr. Speaker, you can call 236-3770. The Red Cross Psychosocial First Aider, call 236-8253 between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the Family Center offers resources and support for parents and children experiencing grief. They provide a grief support tip sheet for parents, covering topics such as creating a supportive environment, memorial activities for children, talking about a tragic death, managing fears and anxieties, recognizing and addressing grief in children, and seeking professional help. To access therapeutic grief support for children between the ages of 4 and 18 years age, please call the Family Center at 232-1116 and ask to speak with a screener. Mr. Speaker, I want to take a moment to specifically address youth mental health. Record levels of young people are struggling with academic pressure, social media, bullying, poverty, and the lack of availability of professional mental health support, all contributing to this epidemic of poor mental health in our young people. The Department of Health has made significant strides in its ongoing commitment to bolster adolescent mental health support. Recognizing the crucial role that schools play in young people's lives, the department has initiated several key programs to build capacity among professionals who interact with children and adolescents on a daily basis. We have been investing in training for professionals who work with our young people, from educators to healthcare providers, to better understand and support the emotional well-being of children and teenagers. This includes learning how to recognize when young people may be struggling and how to connect them with the appropriate resources and support. By equipping health professionals and educators with the tools and knowledge they need, we are helping to foster a supportive and understanding atmosphere for our young people. Finally, Mr. Speaker, if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call 911 at any time. Do not hesitate to contact these organizations for advice and support. Mr. Speaker, we are our brother's keepers. Let us stand together in this time of sorrow, offering love, comfort, and support to those in need. Our community is strong, and by caring for one another, we will find the strength to heal and move forward. To the families, friends, and loved ones of those who have lost their lives, we extend our deepest sympathies and condolences. Our community mourns with you, and we stand with you in this time of grief. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Cabinet Office. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I may, prior to starting my statement, just have a comment.
Just a brief comment?
A brief comment. I just want to echo the sentiments expressed by the Premier, the Minister of Health, and Minister of
Actually,
National
you know
Security.
what? Go on with your regular statement because everybody's already expressed it. So,
Okay.
maybe, we've got motion to adjourn and other.
I'll do it on
tonight.
motion to
Stick to your
adjourn. Thank
statement.
you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to inform this honorable House that later today I will table the Development and Planning Amendment Act 2024. Mr. Speaker, this act will amend the Development and Planning Act 1974, thereby affording the Development Applications Board discretion to approve retroactive development applications that presently must be refused and considered by the minister via appeal. Mr. Speaker, honorable members will be aware that I advised this honorable House of this amendment in my ministerial statement delivered on June 14th, 2024. Underpinning my message on that day was an acknowledgement that the government understood the frustrations that people experience when interacting with the Department of Planning, and that there was clear recognition of the need for improvements to be made. In doing so, the government is desirous to improve procedures that will result in more efficient decision-making and overall unburden the process. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, amendments were made to the Act to provide stronger enforcement powers to address unauthorized development. These amendments introduced provisions for the Director of Planning to issue contravention notices and civil penalties, and took away discretion from the board to approve retroactive planning applications. In particular, the 2018 amendments added sections 20, that's 20, 2A, 2B, and 2C to the Act, which have effectively required the board to refuse in excess of 90% of retroactive planning applications. However, most of these cases fully conform to the policies of the relevant development plan. Mr. Speaker, these 2018 amendments, originally intended to strengthen enforcement, have resulted in added frustration for the public regarding planning processes. We accept this and are prepared to make the necessary changes. Mr. Speaker, it is agreed that a penalty should be applied to those who purposely disregard planning legislation. However, the current legislative framework equally punishes those who blatantly ignore planning legislation, as well as those who have carried out minor development without generally realizing planning permission was required. The current framework also places a significant burden on technical officers and the Development Applications Board in respect of the time taken to process such applications and the subsequent appeal. To address these concerns, the amendment seeks to return the decision-making authority to the Development Applications Board for retroactive applications. This would reduce the bureaucracy associated with the additional step for applicants having to appeal a refused retroactive planning application to the minister responsible for planning, resulting in significant improvements in efficiency. Mr. Speaker, removing these measures through a further amendment will not dilute the outcome for enforcement. The imposition of civil penalties run concurrently to a planning application process and effectively achieve the desired outcome of penalizing those that knowingly breach planning control, and further measures, such as enforcement notices, are available to remedy harm which has been caused by unlawful development. Mr. Speaker, this proposed amendment to the Act represents the realization of one of the measures we promised to continue the overarching aim of bringing greater efficiency to the Department of Planning's process and service delivery to the public. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the final statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Transport. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to everyone, and good morning to Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, in the 2023 Bermuda government throne speech, we made a commitment to deliver digital fair media. This initiative aimed to modernize our public transportation system, making it more efficient, user-friendly, and aligned with global technological advancements. I am pleased, Mr. Speaker, to report this commitment has been fulfilled. Mr. Speaker, on July the 8th, 2024, we launched Phase 1 of the Digital Fair Media Initiative, namely our new brand, SureLink. This phase marked a significant milestone in our journey towards a more integrated and technological advanced public transportation system. The launch was a success, and we are immensely proud of the progress we have made. This initial phase laid the groundwork for future developments, setting a solid foundation for the enhancements to come. Mr. Speaker, the successful implementation of Phase 1 involved the introduction of digital fare payment options for passengers to conveniently buy tickets using their mobile phones through an app. This initiative not only streamlined the fare collection process, but also enhanced the overall passenger experience by providing a more convenient and efficient payment method. Mr. Speaker, as with any large-scale project implementation, we have encountered some challenges. We are not deterred by these initial challenges, as integrating new technology with existing systems often comes with unforeseen issues. We see them as opportunities to learn and improve our service, not as setbacks or failures. We are confident that we have the capacity and the resilience to overcome any obstacle and deliver a world-class public transportation system for our citizens. We are committed to innovation, excellence, and customer satisfaction. We are not afraid to try new things, to embrace change, and to adapt to the evolving needs of our passengers. We are proud of what we have achieved so far, and we look forward to the next phase of this exciting project. Some of the challenges encountered: card selection by seniors. Some seniors were inadvertently selecting a special card instead of the senior card, resulting in rejections. We have resolved this issue. Our call center now reviews and corrects these applications in the back office, ensuring seniors receive the correct card. Impacted seniors have been contacted and their applications have been corrected, or they have reapplied with the correct selection. We will no longer reject applications. Instead, we will ensure they are corrected for seniors. Map display of bus location. Similar to many apps, the map's information becomes less sharp when zoomed out, but becomes clearer and more precise when zoomed in. We encourage users to utilize the zoom feature to adjust the view to their preference. Some correspondence in French, Mr. Speaker. The system vendor is a French company, and their system's default language is French. During the quality assurance and the user acceptance testing phases, the issues were identified and corrected to ensure the system would operate in the desired language. However, during the go live process, the system unintentionally reverted to its default French language setting. This caused some confusion amongst users. We have since addressed and rectified the majority of the issue, ensuring that the system is now correctly displayed in the intended language. There are minor works still to be completed. However, Mr. Speaker, our team is dedicated to addressing and resolving these issues as swiftly as possible. Our priority is to ensure that the public has access to best products and services, and we are committed to making the necessary adjustment to achieve these goals. We have received valuable feedback from users, which has been instrumental in identifying areas for improvements. Our technical teams are working tirelessly to troubleshoot and enhance the system based on this feedback. We are confident that through continuous monitoring and refinement, we will overcome these initial hurdles and deliver a seamless digital fair experience. I encourage the public to continue to provide your feedback, as it is the public we aim to serve and ensure to deliver the best products we can. Customers who need assistance can contact SureLink app support by phone 292-3851 or through the contact form on our website, surelink.bm. Mr. Speaker, the call center is based at the Department of Public Transportation, and customer service representatives are available to assist from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Sunday. Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to visit the center this Wednesday, where I encountered exceptionally pleasant customer service representatives. I'm proud to report that the public is receiving the same high level of service that I experienced during my visit. Mr. Speaker, it is crucial to remind the public that the continued use of current physical media such as tokens, tickets, and passes will remain in place for the foreseeable future. The government is committed to ensuring that no one is left behind as we transition into a more digitalized environment. We are dedicated to provide accessible transportation options for all segments of the population, including seniors, individuals with special needs, and children. This commitment ensures that everyone, regardless of the ability to use digital platforms, will have access to transportation services. Mr. Speaker, building on the success of Phase 1, we are excited to announce the upcoming launch of Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the Digital Fair Media Initiative. These next phases are estimated to be launched in September 2024, and we are optimistic about achieving similar success with these implementation. Mr. Speaker, Phase 2 includes the launch of the real-time passenger information application. This application is designed to provide passengers with up-to-date information about their bus or ferry location and estimated time of arrival. By offering real-time data, we aim to enhance the passenger experience, reduce waiting times, and improve overall satisfaction with our public transportation services. This application will be accessible via smartphones and other digital devices, making it easier for passengers to plan their journeys and stay informed. Mr. Speaker, Phase 3 will introduce the use of credit and debit cards and installation of validators, which will enable digital tickets and passes to be automatically read by validating machines. This innovation will further streamline the boarding process, reduce the need for manual ticket checks, and increase the efficiency of public transportation system. The validators will be installed on all buses and ferries, ensuring comprehensive coverage across the entire network. This phase represents a significant step towards a fully automatic and integrated fare collection system. Mr. Speaker, as a little background, a comprehensive request for proposal for RFP was issued in March 2020, attracting interest from 12 different vendors. After a thorough evaluation by a team of technical officers, Paragon ID was selected as a vendor for implementation of digital fare media. All procedural and procurement protocols were adhered to, which led to the finalization of and signing contract. The contract is valued at $1.9 million over 5 years, to be paid annual installments of $320,000, apart from the initial cost of $604,000 in the first year. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, the Bermuda government is dedicated to delivering the best possible digital fare media to the public. We are proud of the progress we have made with the successful launch of Phase 1 and are eagerly anticipating the launches of Phase 2 and Phase 3. These advancements represent our dedication to modernizing Bermuda's public transportation system and enhancing their overall passengers' experience. We understand, Mr. Speaker, the journey towards full implementation is ongoing, and we remain committed to addressing any challenges that arise along the way. Our focus is on continuous improvement and innovation, ensuring that Bermuda's public transportation system remains at the forefront of technological advancement. Mr. Speaker, we thank the public for their patience and support as we work towards these ambitious goals. Together, we are creating a more efficient, reliable, and user-friendly transportation system for all. We look forward to sharing more updates as we progress through the subsequent phases and continue to deliver our promises. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, that brings us to a close of the statements for this morning, and we now move on. The next item are reports of committees. There are none. Members, today is the second Friday in the month, which means we have Premier's questions today. So Premier's questions on the order paper, and we'll get to Premier's questions. Just a reminder, it's 30 minutes independent, and then we finish that and we go to the 60 minutes of our normal question period. Premier's questions will start now, and the time is 3. Thank you. Thank you, Premier. Members, Premier, we have questions for you this morning. First question is from the opposition leader. Opposition leader, would you like to put your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to you, sir.
Morning.
Good morning to my colleagues and the listening audience. Given the recent violence that has shocked our community and shaken us to our core, would the Honorable Premier please describe the government strategy to address the rising violence in our community?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what is important to note is that there's the dual-pronged approach. There is the matter of ongoing matters related to enforcement, which reside with the Bermuda Police Service under the direction of Government House. Insofar as the work of which the government is doing, it is in regards to intervention with young people through the work of the Gang Violence Reduction Team and others, whether it be the helping agencies, Child and Adolescent Services, Ministry of the Youth, Social Development and Seniors, who work DCFS, who are working with young persons who may be at risk, trying to make sure that we direct them onto the right path. As I mentioned in my comments today, Mr. Speaker, in the ministerial statement, and yesterday, we have seen some success, but it is clear and evident that we have not been able to save all persons. We continue to plead for persons to assist us in this effort. In the conversation discussions of which we've had, there is more that is needed from the parents and outside of our community, insofar as asking for help when they need help, when they identify signs, and making sure that they are being honest with themselves and making sure that they are not afraid to say, I might need help and assistance with our young people. Insofar as when it comes to strategy and resourcing, as I said in my public comments, we will make more resource available. We have made more resource available when those resources have been requested, and ministers have been asked to identify any particular gaps that they may have seen, which is a result of these latest incidents. And I've made the commitment as Minister of Finance that we will fund those particular measures. And of course, members of this House will be able to opine on those matters if supplementary estimates are required to be brought to this House for additional funding.
Yes, please. Thank you. Yes, we thank the. We note the Premier has made a point that a gap analysis will be conducted relating to the current resources and activities of this government for to combat the rising crime. Will the Honorable Premier please inform us when this gap analysis will be conducted or completed? I'm sorry.
To be clear, Mr. Speaker, these things are ongoing. So it is not a question of that we just started. What I said in my response was, as a result of the latest set of circumstances to identify further particular items and possible adjustments and change in policy in that matter. But those things are ongoing. There are regular teams that meet to discuss the social and helping agencies and services. What are the various items that are needed? When there are requests that are brought for additional help and assistance, those are done. The honorable member will recall that in previous times, there were supplementary estimates that were brought for additional support for the police when those requests were made, for additional support for mental health when those requests were made. So this is an ongoing process. It is not something that is just happening now. And so I want to make sure that it is clear that what I said in my earlier response was as a result of the latest incident. This morning, I had a meeting with the Minister of Youth, Social Development and Seniors, with the Permanent Secretary, with the persons in DCFS around certain issues related to counseling. I also had a meeting before the House of Assembly this morning with the Minister of National Security on the same matters. There are meetings earlier this week. There were discussions at Cabinet as well to make sure that gaps are identified. If there's any more, we know that students are out of school, and therefore the traditional avenues of reaching young people that we have set up out during the year were not there, and therefore whether it's the summer camps that are offered by the Ministry of Youth, Social Development and Seniors, or the summer camps that are offered by Tourism, Culture and Sport, we have teams that are going to reach out to those persons to make sure that are in the camps to check on their emotional health. So this is work that is ongoing. So I don't want it to be seen as though if this is reactionary, but after this last incident, I've asked ministers to identify if there are any additional gaps which have come from the team, and made sure to reinforce and reiterate to the leadership of ministers and to the public service executive that if there are additional resources as required, those requests should be made to the Ministry of Finance.
Thank you, Premier. Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Yes, given the nature of the changes are ongoing, my question to the Premier is then what has changed regarding the increased violence? Because it sounds like we're doing exactly what we were doing before.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, what I will say is that I know the honorable member is a former police officer, and what I am not going to do is come here and to quote crime statistics, because though the police will state that overall crime has fallen, we've seen a marked increase in these last few months. At the same point in time, the police have also increased their efforts and have recovered 6 firearms this year. And so I can't speak to particular instances. What I can say is that, as I've noted in my comments, and I think the opposition leaders' comments and other comments, that this is a joint effort and joint approach. In cases and instances like this, what we have to do is just re-examine our efforts. I must repeat, we have seen success since we've come into office, where we have said that we are going to focus and make sure that resources are put towards root causes. We have seen success with young persons who may have been going on a wrong path, where requests has been asked for, where teachers or parents or others have identified their problems, they want to seek help and resolution. Those things we have seen bear success. But as I said in my comments yesterday, Mr. Speaker, our desire is to save all. That is our desire. The reality is that we cannot, but we must continue to work, as we did not get here overnight, and we are not going to get out of it overnight. This is not just a Bermuda problem. We have seen an increase in violence across the world, in the region, whether it be Turks and Caicos, whether it be the Cayman Islands, whether it be the United States, whether it be those things where they're dealing with the increase of these particular incidents. There's a many multitude of social and environmental factors, social media, exposure, different things. There are a number. I'm not going to try to get to diagnose them, because that is not my area of expertise. What I am stating is that the government will ensure that the helping agencies are resourced, and if they require additional, we will make sure that that is provided, Mr. Speaker, because what I will not do is to say here as Minister of Finance to quote statistics around debt metrics and speaking about the fact that we are balanced budget and ratings agencies, et cetera, meeting external targets, when there may be additional resource that needs to be deployed locally. And so from that aspect, Mr. Speaker, that is the commitment from the government. And I hope the honorable opposition leader will join me in welcoming that commitment.
Second question.
Yes, and indeed I do, Mr. Speaker, in terms of this being a matter of priority in our community. But what I would especially do is make sure that we keep an eye on this matter. So to that end, I would ask the Honorable Premier, who has just spoken to, my second question, please, sir, who's just spoken to a number of successes as it relates to the government's effort, if he would be able to describe what those successes are in this matter.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, the gang violence reduction team has a team of over 25 counselors in the community. There are at-risk youth that are identified, that are put into counseling, that are offered employment opportunities, that are doing on a number of things. So, Mr. Speaker, what I'm saying is there have been multiple statements that have come to this House highlighting the effectiveness of those programs. Do we save all persons? No. It is not just an issue of whether or not the government has done what is required. This is a community issue as well. There is a role for parents to play as well. There are a role for others to play as well. But when persons are brought to us, our teams are resourced to work with them, and we have seen young men and young women who were on the wrong path having their lives have been turned around and brought to more productive activities. That is the measure, Mr. Speaker. Those are the successes of which I'm speaking about. On an overall basis, there are challenges. I'm not going to deny that. But I think it is also important that we recognize that there are support there. There is intervention that is taking place in middle schools, in high schools, in community clubs, all throughout the island. And we're going to continue to augment those efforts so that we can reach and identify the gaps. But I must reiterate, as I said in my statement, Mr. Speaker, there is a role for parents to play. Parents, please know that you are not alone. It is a difficult thing to say, Mr. Speaker, but there are some parents that are afraid of their children. There are some parents that don't know what to do. And I must plead and urge, if you see the signs, if you are nervous, if you are anxious around this, please do reach out. As I said, the Gang Violence Reduction Team has a team of 25 persons inside of the community that work all the time to aid in intervention and diverting young persons to positive activity. Those are the successes of which I speak about, Mr. Speaker, and those are the things of which we must continue to do, and we must continue to support not only with financial resources and human resources, but also as a community imploring persons to take advantage of those services that are offered so that parents can get the help that they may need in making sure that we arrest the slide of some young persons.
Supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I thank the Honorable Premier for bringing up the work undertaken by the Gang Violence Reduction Team. I would ask the Honorable Premier, obviously this enterprise costs money, costs taxpayer money. My question relates to, is it working? And so my question to the Honorable Premier is, has the Gang Violence Reduction Team satisfied the expectations of this government to date?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I think that the intervention and work, the work that I've seen, the work that I've experienced personally, the work that I know that is taking place, the number of individuals that are seen, that are intervened with, is yielding results. May we need to do more? In some cases and instances, absolutely. But I must remind the honorable member that this is not just in regards to the government. The community has a role to play. We can only assist those persons who are brought to us. They are identified oftentimes in schools, and there's interventions. But at the same points in time, we have to understand, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes these things are missed. And so with the intervention efforts, I believe that they are positive. We must measure this in a scale of progress and positivity and what is happening. And I know for a fact that there are a number of young men and young women who have been diverted from going on a negative path due to the interventions, not only the Gang Violence Reduction Team, but all the associated agencies of which they work with. Whether or not that be the family center, whether or not be the churches, whether or not be all of those items as the community level. And so I would ask the honorable member to please recognize this and feel free to identify any additional areas of which he and his colleagues may feel may need to be augmented. But I think it is important to recognize and support the work of not only the persons who are employed directly by the Ministry of National Security, but all of the community partners of which they work with throughout various aspects and agencies of the government and in the third sector.
You. Second sub or third question?
Third question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Honorable Premier for inviting the opposition to contribute to these notes. To that end, I would thank members that this matter is very serious and probably doesn't require the normal parliamentary interventions. To my point, Mr. Question, my understanding is that BPS or Bermuda Police Service officers are exposed to civil liability. That is, that they can be sued in the performance of their duties. And this obviously places those officers in a precarious position as they effectively feel no one has their backs. What does the government plan to do to protect officers in the performance of their duties?
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honorable member for raising that. I know that this is an issue that has come to my attention. I don't have the specifics on this. I can have an undertaking to get back to the minister around this. I know this is something I think, the best of my recollection, has come up due to recent, whether it's regarding negotiations and or matters that are related to court cases. I am set to discuss further this weekend with the Minister and Police Commissioner of Return to the Island, and I'm happy to revert further to the honorable member. But I will express on a broad measure that I think that it is important that we do support the police and to ensure that the standards are upheld, and to make sure, to the point of his question, if there are officers that may feel that they cannot fully execute their duties due to issues of pretension to civil liability, I will accept the fact that that is a challenge that we must fix.
Okay, thank you. Supplementary?
None, thank you.
3 questions from the opposition leader. MP Jackson, would you like to put your questions?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
My question to the Premier, Minister of Finance. Will the Premier, as Minister of Finance, who legislates taxi metered fares, please explain how local dispatcher Hitch Dispatch Limited is able to charge triple the metered rate for customers paying to travel from Cutmatch this year?
Premier? I'm trying to tie that to a response that falls. You're directed it to the Minister of Finance. I'm thinking tourism, but I'm transport, but Minister. Okay, explain your point again. Okay.
Yes, the Minister of Finance is the one who sets the metered rates for taxi drivers, for the taxis. And so I just want to know if the Premier, as Minister of Finance, who regulates taxi fares, can allow Hitch, a local dispatch company, to charge triple the rate to customers who are traveling during the Cutmatch holiday.
I don't know whether it's finance or transport who sets the rates. Premier, if you want to just clarify who sets the rates, and we'll be fine from there, I guess.
The rates are set under the Ministry of Transport, and I'm not entirely certain where the honorable member is trying to get at, but I see that we'll go to attempted personal line of question today, so I will try my best to answer the personal line of questioning.
I was just seeking who is responsible for the fare.
Yes.
If you're not responsible for the fare, I don't think you can respond to it. So if it's not, it's actually the Minister of Finance, Minister of Transport who's responsible for the fare.
So I was told by the Minister of Transport that the Ministry of Finance sets the fares for the taxi industry, the metered fares.
Point of order, Mr.
Wait a minute. It's the Premier's response, but Minister of Transport, I'm going to give you an opportunity to clarify what you may or may not have said, if you'd like to clarify it. Because the shadow minister is on the interpretation that you set, her question is based on something that you said to her. And we're trying to get clarification on that.
Mr. Speaker, I have never said anything to the honorable member from that side. I know she just woke up, but I haven't said anything to the member.
She wasn't being personal.
No, but
No,
I'm not
then-
being personal either, Mr. Speaker, but she's
no,
being
no.
personal saying I said it.
No. She didn't get personal in a negative way.
Oh, okay.
She implied that her line of question was based on a conversation that she had with the Minister of Transport. If you feel that the Minister of Transport's comments were not as she stated, you just have to state that you didn't. You don't have to get personal about it.
No, I accept that, Mr. Speaker. I have never said anything to the honorable member.
MP Jackson, the minister saying that he in no way implied that.
Mr. Speaker, during the budget or prior to budget, I asked about the increase in taxi metered fares. And I was told that the approval of any increase to taxi meters needed to be approved by the Ministry of Finance.
And member, that question was asked in this house?
This question was asked outside of this house during a briefing prior to the 2024 budget season.
Okay, I was asking specifically if it was in this house, because if it was in this house, there would be a record somewhere of it during the Hansard, etc. If it was outside of this house in a side conversation, I am in a difficult position to decide on that question. If it was in this house, I can make a easier ruling that we can always find the information that was supplied in here. Outside of here, my hands are basically tied. I can't speak to an individual conversation. But to clarify the matter, the question that you put to the Premier is a question that should go to the Minister of Transport, is what we're assessing at this point. Am I correct, Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that rates that are set under the Motor Car Act are set by the Minister of Transport, and the honorable member can look that up in law.
Okay, thank you. So if you'd like to put your question in a different time, in a different setting, the question should be directed to the Minister of Transport and not to the Premier. Okay? That's the best I can do for you. I can't rule on a conversation that was had outside here for this matter. Okay? Because it wasn't public a conversation. Okay? Okay. Members, I didn't need any assistance. I didn't need any assistance at all. Okay. So your whole questions were based on that. So I'm assuming no other question. Okay. Yeah, that's true. One question, two supplementaries. No problem. Okay. We'll move on. The next member who has a question is MP Adams. Would you like to put your question?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I think we all can agree that education is one of society's most essential tools for creating pathways, providing opportunities, and is also a powerful way to combat the impacts of community violence. Can the Honorable Premier please advise what this government has done since returning to office to improve our education system and provide more resources and opportunities for our students?
Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honorable member for his question because, as I stated in my comments to the press yesterday, education and opportunity are important items. The first thing is to make sure that the resources are there and available. And so whether or not that's the technology resources where all of our students now have computers in schools, whether or not that is making sure that all of our classes and our schools are actually fully connected to the internet, which is not something that we found when we came into the office, where we didn't even have Wi-Fi in 2017 in our schools. But also it's important to note the fact that we have implemented the signature schools. The minister had spoken earlier about the fact that we have signature schools, that the third signature school that is opening with partnerships, the fact that Bermuda now has a trade school, which is something that persons have called for us to revert back to, and persons are at Cedar Ridge Academy, and whether or not it is the issues of access to Bermuda College and the work through the Department of Workforce Development with the youth employment strategy. These are all matters that are related to education, that are related to opportunity, that are related to training, which are essential for us to make sure that are put in place to offer persons options. And when we spoke earlier in question time regarding what is the work, We know that persons have gone from being seen and at risk in one of our helping agencies, whether or not that is through the gang violence reduction team or other teams that work with young people, to then be directed to PASS where they can get certifications, attend Bermuda College, and move on to spaces of gainful employment. And so from that particular aspect, Mr. Speaker, it is dealing with the education matters themselves in the public education system, the access to higher education, and also vocational training and education that is being offered. Scholarships have been doubled. Apprenticeships have been increased. We have made sure that we have provided additional resources to our school system. And where there's a need to find more space and opportunity to do that, we will do so, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Premier for that response. Mr. Speaker, cost is a major factor that students and their families must consider when discussing further education. Can the Honorable Premier please advise how the government is assisting students when it comes to the cost of furthering their education?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is without question a challenge that is faced. And I remember one of the first acts that this government did was to reverse the changes that were made under the OBA, which where Bermuda College was free when they came into office, Bermuda College was no longer free when they left office. And we made sure that no person, no Bermudian was denied access to higher education due to their family's financial circumstances. We implemented College Promise. We implemented scholarships for those persons who had above a 3.0 grade point average so they could attend on merit-based scholarships, if not need-based scholarships. In addition to that, we have increased our budget for scholarships, awarding over $2 million of scholarships annually. I believe at a previous sitting, the minister did outline those particular matters. Scholarships that are worth up to $35,000 for 4 years. We also made sure that we can, if there is a higher figure, that those numbers can be met. And also, what's important, Mr. Speaker, we also made sure through one of our election pledges, although the airline that we're working with changed their plan, we made sure that we provided support for transportation as well for students who may be traveling from school, et cetera. And so in addition to that, Mr. Speaker, we've also allocated money in support for educational trips for public schools so they can apply for those aspects. So there's a number of items which we've done to make sure that we can increase affordability, increase access, and also increase exposure.
No, thanks.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, colleagues. At present, Premier, are there any MPs as of today that are hired as consultants for any particular ministries?
I would say absolutely.
Supplemental? Can the Premier name those consultants, MPs that are consultants?
Mr. Speaker, what I will not do is to try to provide a list, as I may not know, and then there will be criticisms in regards to whether or not those persons are consultants or non-consultants or on contracts doing extra work or work regarding their board-related activity or different things like that. What I do know specifically, I know that MP Jamal Simmons is working in a consultancy role specifically. I know there are other MPs who may be in consulting roles which may have fallen. I know there's MPs that are working in particular branch roles, and I'm happy to make sure to get a full and complete answer to the member, or if he wants to submit that statement. But what I don't want to do is to get myself in a particular challenge where persons are saying these things occur through numerous government agencies, and what I don't want to do, or government departments, what I don't want to do is provide an incomplete list.
Yeah. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Yeah, I get that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A bit hard to believe, but thank you very much. I'll accept it. And the supplementary will be, when can I get the list? And can you give me a specific time?
Happy to have the Cabinet Office review the records and provide the list. Hopefully, by the time we have the next sitting, no issue. Or if if the member wants to submit a regular parliamentary question the regular way, we can do that as well. Mr. Speaker, on issues when it comes to transparency, there is no issue. The government must be held accountable to the House for all of its particular actions. That is what's spelled in our Constitution, and there's no issue doing that. It should be important to note that the reason why we have this question time is because this government made a commitment to do so in its 2017 manifesto. Work with you to change the rules of the House to make sure there's more transparency and accountability for the elected government, and that's what we'll continue to do, Mr. Speaker.
Yep. MP Kennedy, you've had yours. The next is MP Pearman. MP Pearman, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Premier, your government is proposing legislative changes around clean air coming on the back of the Belco emissions concerns. Government allowed only 3 weeks for the consultation period, and stakeholders have requested an extension of time and have been denied that request for an extension of time. Can you explain why that extension of time request was refused in relation to this important issue by important stakeholders?
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, this is a very important matter. It is something that the government does not wish to delay further. It is something that affects many of our constituents. And what we are going to do is to make sure to move forward, press forward, and act on this. And persons who need to comment can feel free to comment within the required time frame.
Premier. Let me just reset the clock to the 60 minutes so that we can do the regular question period. And we'll move on at that point. Okay, we're now have completed the Premier's questions. We'll now move on to statements that were given this morning. And from the statements this morning, we do have questions. If you note on the order paper, there was a written question this morning, a set of questions to go to the Minister of Economy and Labor. We are carrying those over to next week because of a technical matter, and all parties understand that. Thank you. The statements this morning have questions. And the first statement this morning is in reference to the Premier's second statement, and that's from MP Pearman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. Thank you, Honorable Premier. In your statement, you referred to reforms in relation to pensions and the capping of fees by prevention providers. You referred to this being collaborative between the government and the pension administrators. And you referred to private sector, so it wasn't clear from your statement. Will this also apply to the government sector pension? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I answer the question, does the honourable member have an interest to declare in this matter?
All my interests are declared on the website of the Parliament, and I do have a pension, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just for full note, I know that his declarations do include matters related to Bermuda Fire and Marine and also Argus as well, who are pension administrators, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to make sure that that record is made clear.
Point of order. Those interests are declared on the public website in accordance with the law. Thank you.
Yeah, I was about to say that we like to make sure that members keep that registry current. And I think here's current on that. Any changes to it, please make it known. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is for private sector pensions. The government pension plans do not have these particular administration fees of which the honorable member is referring to. And I think that it is important to note that particular matter. I'm grateful that the honorable member has mentioned his matter related to his particular declarations, and I will assure the honorable member that these particular issues were canvassed, were addressed. It is something that was raised in 2019, brought forward. It was something that has come to the government through public consultation that we did, that has been raised, and we are pleased to be enacting and moving forward this particular measure, which will preserve pension balances and make sure that persons have larger private pension balances when they retire.
Supplementary.
Yes.
Yes, I believe in the Premier's answer, he just said that the government pension fund, the public service superannuation fund, does not have any fees. That is not a budgeted item in the government budget. How does that run? And how are costs taken from that fund if it has no fees?
So we are talking here about the administration fees that are charged insofar as PFIC and the work of which they do insofar as the investments. Most of those investments are in fixed income funds and others. If the honorable member wants a detailed explanation on those particular fees, happy to provide them. But this is for private sector pensions where pension administrators in the country, such as the administrators who I previously mentioned, that the honorable member has an interest in, do charge rates that are as high as 4.2%, which have seen constituents complain about the excessive fees that are charged, and it is up to the government to act. So in 2019, we changed the law to provide the Minister of Finance the power to make those particular prescriptions. It was stated in previous budget statements that were delivered by the Minister of Finance at the time that this is something that we were going to address, and we are completing the work to ensure that there is equity in pensions and that we ensure that persons have larger retirement balances and less funds are collected in fees, which means that more funds can go towards persons' retirement.
Supplementary.
Second supplemental, looking for a straight answer to a straight question. Will there be any change to the government sector pension fees? Thank you.
So the thing is, Mr. Speaker, there are not individual fees because the government plan is not individual plans. However, I am happy to make the particular commitment that if the fees are above these particular limits, the fee same matters will apply.
Second question. No further question? Thank you. MP De Silva, did you still wish to ask your question?
I do, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead.
Premier, I think it's fantastic that this government, and I repeat, this government, is taking action to ensure that those persons in my constituency will have a larger retirement balance when they retire. The Premier has informed Bermuda that the government will be capping administration fees. Will the Honorable Premier be able to inform this Honorable House approximately how much in fees have been collected by pension administrators since the legislation was passed under the UBP in 1998?
Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honorable member for his question. The Pension Commission has estimated that since its inception, the total amount of fees that has been collected is in the area of $500 million in gross administration fees for pension administrators. And this, of course, is just dealing with group plans, Mr. Speaker. This does not include any particular administration fees that may be earned by self-administered plans, individual plans administered by plan administrators. And this does not include investment management or advisory fees that plan administrators either receive directly or via their investment management subsidiaries. It is important to note also that we have said inside of this that there cannot be double dipping. So you can't charge a fee for the administration and then charge a fee on the other side if you're going to make the investment through your investment arm and then get a fee there as well. But Mr. Speaker, those are the figures, and that is why this is around equity. This is around ensuring that Bermudians, because the National Pension Scheme applies to Bermudians, mandates to Bermudians. Others can have, non-Bermudians may, but the only mandate is for Bermudians. This is for equity for pensions in Bermudians, and is an example of this government examining, seeing where inequity exists, and being able to take the tough legislative decision to ensure that Bermudians are protected so they have larger pension balances for their retirement.
Supplementary.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I certainly do. The Honorable Premier can be correct in that statement. He can't be. Is the Premier telling this House that pension administrators have collected $500 million since 1998, when this legislation was introduced by the former United Bermuda Party. Because, Mr. Speaker, and I stand to be corrected. Now, I done some quick figuring.
What's your question?
Okay, $500 million, Mr. Speaker, is 19 million a year or 1.6 million a month. Can the Premier tell me if this is correct?
I think the question was answered already.
So
You
what?
said it was $500,000.
So what I will say is, Mr.
500
Speaker,
million.
is that we will have an opportunity to debate this legislation in the future when it comes and the specific changes. I wanted to make sure that we made this important announcement to confirm the dates when this would come into place, insofar as with the consultation with pension plan administrators, so they have the time to make sure that they can adjust their systems to be ready for April 1st, 2025. But as I stated, that is the estimate. It is a significant amount of money. It is shocking because if those fees are reduced, that means that Bermudians can have more money in their pension balances. And we are committed to capping those fees. And when we see where there is an equity where the government can act, we will act.
Yep. Yeah, second sub?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for the Premier's confirmation of that staggering figure of 500 million a month, 500 billion over that period, which is 1.6 million a month. So I thank him for that. But what I would like to ask the Honorable Premier, what other actions may the government take to ensure that the people have a pension that can support themselves when they retire?
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honorable member for the question, because there's one thing about dealing with fees as well. And also making sure there's no double dipping, as mentioned earlier, where persons are charging fees on the money coming in and then are charging fees on the investments that are run by their investment arms, of which they are making the investments in. So that's another step. But I think it's also important to note that this is not just about capping fees. This is about the continued work which is necessary and required to promote savings for persons' retirement. One of the things which we want to do in working with the pension administrators is to increase the matters that are happening on financial literacy. There's also something else, which is a recommendation which has come from pension administrators inside of the consultation. And I'll share, for example, Mr. Speaker, if someone who has a individual pension plan or a group pension plan does not elect what type of investment strategy they want to follow, conservative, moderate, or I would say more risky, high risk, they are automatically defaulted to the conservative balance. And for investment persons, where persons are younger, the advice is to be more aggressive, then moderate, then more conservative as time goes on. And so one of the recommendations which have come as part of this consultation is where no election is made, it is defaulted to the most appropriate investment strategy given the person's age. So that means that persons will even have larger pension balances following over time. And so there's a number of measures that are happening. There is more that will come on this. But as I said, the reason to make this announcement today is to state and confirm that the cabinet has approved this policy after consultation so that pension administrators can begin the work to start to prepare their systems to be ready for this reduction of fees, which will come into place on April 1st, 2025.
Thank you. That's the end of questions for you on that statement, Premier. Members, thank you for your participation. The next question that has, next statement that has questions is that of the Minister of Transport. Minister of Transport, you have questions from MP Jackson. MP Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my first question is, the Minister of Transport had mentioned a 5-year. He can do whatever. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Transport had mentioned a 5-year relationship with Paragon that has the ShoreLink digital fare technology. And my question is, will the Paragon or ShoreLink, I'm going to call it as refer to as ShoreLink, will they be the provider of all the additional features such as the credit card, digital payments, and so on? Will ShoreLink and as Paragon be the provider of the additional technology features that will be introduced at a later date?
Thank you. Minister?
Yes.
Supplementary?
Second question.
Second question, okay.
Will the transport minister please explain the payment method? And by payment method, I'm referring to will the funds that are used online through ShoreLink to pay for these passes, is that going to be processed locally through the local banks, or will this, because he mentioned that ShoreLink is a French has a French affiliation, will the payments actually be going overseas?
Minister?
No.
Okay. Supplementary? Or
Yes,
third question?
yes.
Supplementary.
Yes. Will the transport minister just explain to us how that payment process is then? So when you pay on with your credit card through the ShoreLink app, where does that is that money processed through a local company, or can you explain that?
Minister?
It's only the app that goes through Paragon. All the money flows through the banks here in Bermuda.
Supplementary or third question?
Yes, so would the minister be willing to name how that money is being transitioned through? Are we using a local company to process the payments through this app? If you can just explain that, please.
Minister?
Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. I don't understand. I hear what the honorable member is saying, but I don't get the whole technological aspect of it. The money flows is handled by the accounting journal, et cetera, and it flows through the bank.
I think you provided the answer when you said accounting general. The money just goes into Bermuda, into the transport as a payment locally. Okay. I'm trying to help everybody here. That's all I'm trying to do. That's what it seems like it's going to go through the regular structure of payment in Bermuda. Okay. All right. Any other further questions on that? Okay. Members, that brings us to a close of the questions that were put for statements this morning. We thank you for your participation. We'll now move on to the next items on the order paper. The next item is congratulatory and obituary speeches. Would any member wish to make a contribution at this time? Any member? None? Oh. Minister, MP Lister, you jumped down there pretty quickly, or slowly that time, I should say. So you got your 3 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this has been a very sad and heavy week in Bermuda, Mr. Speaker. And while I don't know the names of all of those involved, I do just want to send condolences to the families of those that we lost this week, Mr. Speaker. It is a saddening thing and a week that Bermuda, hopefully, you will never see or hear of again in Bermuda. But Mr. Speaker, while sad and tragic news has highlighted our newspaper this week, Mr. Speaker, I want to take some time to highlight and recognize young people that have been representing Bermuda well overseas in sports, Mr. Speaker. As I have a passion for sports, I always like to go to the sports section of the Royal Gazette and look for those that are representing Bermuda. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to send congratulations to young Mr. Oliver, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, Batchard, Oliver Batchard, who was representing Bermuda and participating in the Scottish Under-16 Boys Open Championship for golf, Mr. Speaker, and he finished in 4th place out of, I believe, 170-something other young boys. So, Mr. Speaker, again, Bermudians pushing the ceiling, pushing and showing our weight that we can compete in these sports. So I'd like to congratulate Oliver Batchard. And also, Mr. Speaker, congratulations to the whole of the Bermuda Pacers Track Club, who recently participated in the Flying Angels International Track and Field Championships in Toronto. And they've done Bermuda extremely well. They returned with 25 medals, 10 of them gold medals, Mr. Speaker. And they also set a new track record at that event with the under 13 girls relay team recording the relay race in 4 minutes 36 seconds. So setting a new track record at that field, Mr. Speaker. So again, with the news that we have had this week, we can always look to highlight young people that are doing well, representing Bermuda, and congratulations to them and all our Bermudians, those that to come in the Olympic Games, for them that they represent Bermuda well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, good morning. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be associated with the condolences for those who we lost this week. I don't think I know any of the people that have been named, but like many in this country, it causes you to pause and reflect and try and figure out what it is that a government could do or individuals can do to try and stop this from continuing to happen in this country. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to send condolences to the family of a constituent of mine, the 102-year-old Dr. Dorothy Louise Matthews Painter, who passed this week, I think like 8 days after her 102nd birthday. Mr. Speaker, we had made, she's a constituent of mine and has been for my entire time representing C27, and a staunch supporter of the PLP and a staunch supporter of the branch. We had planned to visit her on her birthday on the 26th of June, and learned 2 hours before we set off that she was hospitalized, so we didn't get a chance to see her. But we went to see her on Saturday, the 6th of July, and I don't know what our 102-year-old person is supposed to act like or be like, but she set the example. She was full of life, delighted to see us. We stayed and chatted for a while. She had in her house, in her living room and her dining room, plates on the wall of every place on the planet that she had visited, and there were many. She was just a lively, positive 102-year-old, and you couldn't say to her that she was 102. And I can't remember the term that she used to describe what her age was, but it didn't acknowledge 100 was not in it. And she'd also indicated what next year's birthday would be named as. And so she will be a significant miss to the Hillview community and the constituency of 27, and I suspect the wider constituency of Bermuda. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, like most of us in this chamber, the first thing I do in the morning is look at the obituaries. And I happened to see a name there that I was associated with a very, very long time ago. So firstly, let me say I'd like for condolences to be sent to the family of Mr. Henry Cullen Adderley of Old Rectory Lane in Pembroke. I'll give a bit of background. When I was a young 30-year-old with a pregnant wife and 2 children, I had interest in buying a house, and the bank at the time refused me on 2 occasions. That was the loan officer, and I got a little agitated and asked to see the manager. And the manager at that time happened to be Mr. Henry Cullen Adderley, and he took a liking to this young man and signed off on the loan without much agitation at that time. So I certainly would like for condolences to be sent to his family and hope that he rests in heavenly peace. I will associate MP De Silva as well. On a more happier note, my colleague alongside of me gave congratulations to a neighbor of mine, and I'd like to be associated to Oliver Betchart. He's a young up-and-coming golfer, and I think we're going to hear a lot about him in the future, having, as you see, placed well in the Scottish Open very, very recently. I would also, and this is just a coincidence, that the person that I now want to send congratulations to is also a neighbor of Oliver up in Rocklands, where I live, Miss Sandra Boras. She was honored by being the Teacher of the Year at the Barclay Institute this year, and I would certainly like congratulations to be sent to her. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to be associated with condolences which have been offered already, and which I have expressed in public forums and private forums, and certainly associate all members of the House with that and ask that letters be sent from the House. And I would also rise, Mr. Speaker, to please associate myself with the condolences that were offered by the Minister for Public Works on the passing of Dr. Dorothy Matthews. It was a pleasure. Remember, the last time I did see her was when the Patriot primary had that station for her, and I remember taking a picture with her to share with my mother, as Miss Dorothy Matthews worked with my mom, or I would say that my mom worked for Miss Dorothy Matthews way back in the day, probably before I was before I was born, without question. But she was without question a remarkable human being, full of vigor, full of life, will be dearly missed. And I did not want the moment to pass without rising to extend and associate myself with the condolences to her family. Many of them who we know, many of them who've worked very hard, and many of them who've had to deal with a lot of the trauma of which we've been experiencing over the past week. One of those persons who I met with this morning. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to this morning to be associated with the condolences of those persons who have lost their lives this week to such violent matters. I, like the Premier, have spoken publicly and early in the House, so it's not much more that I need to say on that. I also want to be associated with the remarks from Ms. Dorothy Painter. I too was up at Paget to I think their Black History Week, and had the opportunity to meet and talk with Ms. Dorothy Painter. The time I met with her this past February, Mr. Speaker, didn't seem at all that she was going 100, because she was vibrant and full of history and encouragement to us. So my heart and my condolences go out to her. But Mr. Speaker, on a positive note, I too want to be associated with the remarks for Oliver Betchart. I want to say that a member of our House, the MP from C2, was one of Mr. Betchart's first teachers, and during some teaching lessons up at to Mr. Kim Swan, during some teaching lessons up at Port Royal, I was a part of the foursome now and then, and actually, you know, I actually were laughing, right? But this little boy was really good at 10 and 11. I would never admit to what the member from C5 has said, but I really saw way back then that this young man
like that,
had a lot of potential, Mr. Speaker. So thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to make a contribution? Deputy Speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to be associated with the remarks on the passing of Ms. Dorothy Matthews, and also all those that have lost their lives in the last 7 days with the tragedies that has occurred in Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, I also would like to send condolences to the family of Mr. Winston Berkeley from Bevel Searle, Harris's Bay. I'd like to associate the Minister Rebane in that, who leaves his wife and children, and he would be certainly funeralized shortly and sorely missed by his entire family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Deputy? MP Fogo, you trying to rise to your feet? You look like you're having trouble that time. There you go.
Good morning to the House. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to the people of Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, I rise to be associated with the condolences for the tragic loss of the two young Barclayites. They graduated last year. They were in my grandson's year. I watched them through their graduation ceremonies, saw much joy that they felt having accomplished some of the accolades that they did in the graduation ceremony. Our hearts are reeling for their loss. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to be associated with the condolences regarding Carol Parfit and her family. Carol is a St. Georgian. She grew up with the Fogo family down in back of town, St. George's. If those who don't know, she's Toppins Parfit's sister. I only say that because we're close to Cop Match. And when we heard of her loss, it just threw us for a loop, Mr. Speaker. Some of us know of tragedy similar that has happened in the past. So you can imagine for families that have experienced similar tragedy, how it impacts them. And I just hope that we can send out remarks of condolences to the entire family. While it doesn't change anything, just having something from our house, allowing families like that to know that the government, and when I say the government, I mean opposition and the current government of the day, are there with them and are willing to support them in their time of loss. So, Mr. Speaker, on that note, I will take my seat. Yeah.
Thank you. Does any other Minister Furbert?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is much grief spread throughout our island these past couple of weeks. I myself also would like to be associated with the condolences for the families of the Parfit family, as well as the two young men that were recently found. I have to get to my feet to speak to this. It is a hard one, particularly for our young people in our community who are trying to understand what has happened. And so to the families, we just want you to know that you are in our thoughts and prayers as we continue to put the pieces together. And to all the young people out there that are also grieving along with the families, that we want you to also be comforted during this very difficult time that we experience. I also, Mr. Speaker, want to send condolences or be associated with the condolences of Mr. Berkeley, as well as the Devil's Hill girl. I actually remember I grew up in his apartment. He was our landlord, and so we knew the Berkeley family pretty well. And so condolences to the family of Mr. Winston Berkeley, as well as the family of Mr. Eugene Jonathan Hank Swan of Hamilton Parish. Sending condolences to his family. Wanting to also share condolences to the family of Shantia Benjamin Smith, who was also recently laid to rest. She was part of our KMCC family, wanting to offer condolences to the family also of Shantia Benjamin Smith. Mr. Speaker, I also want to take the time to give a big congratulations to Ms. Yushay Andrade, who has won the Bocce World Tournament, a recent endeavor that she has won. She still has another match, Mr. Speaker, and we wish her the best of luck going forward with that Bocce tournament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
MP Richardson, Anthony Richardson.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, to my colleagues and those in the listening audience. Mr. Speaker, I want to stand today to say that Bermuda, Mr. Speaker, has lost another son of the soil since our last House sitting. And it is a personal one for me, Mr. Speaker, because the man actually called me son. Mr. Speaker, he was not my biological father, my stepfather, or my spiritual father, but rather my father-in-law. None other than Mr. Clarence Frederick Wellington Smith, who is also a constituent of mine. And I do associate certainly MP Burgess, Minister Rabin, Minister Tanay, everybody, Mr. Speaker, because he was a great, great man from the great Davos Hill area. Mr. Speaker, I will say that he was a master communicator. Mr. Speaker, my longest conversation with him was actually 8 days. And my shortest, Mr. Speaker, was 3 words. Both conversations were mess up, a threat as far as I was concerned. But Mr. Speaker, he was a well-regarded unionist for both the BRU and later the BPSU, and a long-serving member of the Bermuda Credit Union, ultimately becoming a trustee. And and MP Burgess has reflected the fact that when he was the president of the credit union, that Mr. Smith, my father-in-law, was in fact a staunch supporter. And Mr. Speaker, I know from first-hand experience that he did not mince his words. Sometimes he did not say anything, but you knew from his body language exactly what he meant. Mr. Speaker, he was actually a long-term employee of Marine Imports, and his desire was to be the first Black marine engineer, which governed him for more than 45 and a half years. And he had that desire despite the fact that others, even other Black Bermudians, did not believe it was possible. Mr. Speaker, at that time, it was well known that the Bermudian marine engineers were actually white and from the UK. And so he went on board and he made up his mind, no matter what, I'm going to achieve that, which he ultimately did. Mr. Speaker, he also became the first Bermudian motor ship engineer. And in his retirement, which I was amazed at, is he was recognized by the Lloyds of London for his excellence. Mr. Speaker, I'll speak later about this because he also was instrumental in my understanding of the Health Insurance Act 1970, tremendous, survived by his wife Lynn, known as Graham's, his sister Marsha, Lerner, his brother Michael, and my wife Dr. Holly, and his grandchildren Jordan and Kellen, brother-in-law Johnny Painter, and many nieces and nephews. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP Richardson. MP De Silva, you have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to join in giving condolences to the Parfitt and the Sherlock family from Southampton with the recent loss of their family. Carol and her children were constituents of mine, Mr. Speaker. And right after the tragic event, I was sent a picture of me and the children at one of my back to school parties, which won our treasure for life. So I certainly send out my condolences to the family. I have visited them and we spent some good times together, and actually some enjoyment was had during that visit. Mr. Speaker, whilst I'm on my feet, I'd like to join in with the congratulations to young Oliver Betchard, who is, if anyone goes up to Port Royal at any given time, they'll see this young man, whether it be on the driving range or the putting green if it's not playing. So it's certainly dedicated. I'm sure that his father is very proud of his achievements to date. And I'm sure that this young man, avoiding injury, will certainly do Bermuda proud in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP. Is any other member wish to make a comment? MP Famous?
Mr. Speaker, I wasn't going to come today, but someone encouraged me to come. Mr. Speaker, I speak on behalf of a parish that is in mourning, 2 parishes that are in mourning. We have lost a young girl, lady. her two young children. I know in Somerset there's a loss as well. And 2 days ago we lost two of Devonshire's brightest young minds. Mr. Speaker, just like everyone else, we abhor violence. We abhor what's going on this week. And sometimes you listen to people, the media people, and they ask these questions as if they have no sensitivities to the families, as if the government or even the opposition can do something about what's going on. All I'm going to say, Mr. Speaker, to everybody in there, if you have a son, hug him. Let him know you love him. Because, Mr. Speaker, this week I lost two sons. And I'm standing here because they would want me to stand here and tell people love is what we need as black people towards each other. And I would just simply say to the media, this isn't just a story just to sell newspaper. Families are hurting. Families are in grief. And no amount of questions are going to change what has happened. So I say to the people of Pembroke, people of Somerset, Devonshire, all of Bermuda, let us understand none of us have the answers to this. But you have your sons, your daughters, hug them, tell them you love them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP. Does any other member wish to make a contribution at this time? MP King, you have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I echo the sentiments of honorable members in the House reference the grief and loss that this community and the families have experienced. It's an absolute tragedy. On a brighter note, though, I just wanted to commend the post office workers at Kroll Post Office yesterday. Went there about 5 to 4, was served with a smile and excellent customer service. So I just wanted to say congratulations and thank you for the great service of the ladies at Kroll Post Office.
Thank you. Thank you. Minister, Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to stand to join in with all of the comments about the tragedies that have happened this past week. I spoke with the grandmother of one of the shooting victims this morning, and she was she was very upset about what happened, and she just happens to be one of my constituents. Mr. Speaker, this is not lost on me, the effect that these have and the ripple effect that these senseless acts of violence have had throughout the education system, Mr. Speaker. We have someone that works in our education reform unit that was the sister of one of the victims. We have school teachers that have been reaching out to ask for how do we navigate this with our students. We have to have we've already put things in place to be available for when students come back in September. We have 3 schools that are affected. We have a senior school, primary school, and as difficult as it is to say, a student that would have been starting one of our preschools, and it has affected us tremendously, Mr. Speaker. So I echo the comments of my fellow MP, Chris Famous. Please, if you do have children, talk to them, love them. I had to have the conversation with my daughter, myself, to ask her, are you affected by this? What are you and your friends talking about? Is there anything that we can say, or what conversations we need to have? And this is what I just encourage parents to do. Just talk to your children, find out what they're doing, find out how they're doing, how they're reacting, and the types of things their friends are saying to them, Mr. Speaker. This is just one part of the healing that is needed in this nation for us to move forward, Mr. Speaker. There is no one shot solution to what it is that we're looking at. That is the effect of decades and decades of things that took us to get us to this place. But we can all get through this if we all do our part, as small as it may seem, Mr. Speaker. So I just encourage everybody to, I encourage my fellow Bermudians, I encourage my fellow members here, just reach out to any young person that you know, have a conversation with them, ask them how they're doing, ask them if they need any assistance, and ask them how can we support them, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Is there any other member? MP Kennedy?
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Sharing the sentiments, of course, by all to the last tragic events that have taken place over the week. It is certainly a solemn time. On a high note, though, I would like to, Mr. Speaker, a former parliamentarian, congratulate member, I believe he has the honorable title still, Bob Richards, for the book launch and reading that he had last night. He has become quite a book writer. He put out a book last year or year before last called Triangle of Treason. And last night, his book launch and reading was a new book that he's just written called Triangle of Blood. And they are a sequence of books that he is writing. The interesting thing about what he's doing is he's taking historical facts of Bermuda and our involvement throughout the ages, actually, in particular the world wars leading up to World War II, which is this latest book, Triangle of Blood. And interspersed in this fiction book is facts about Bermuda. And last night, we had the opportunity to look at Bermudians who played key roles into so many things that you would probably not even think of in discovery and science and the likes. So I just want to congratulate him and his family who have been putting these books out. It is a really, really good read. After he read a few chapters last night, I actually went into reading the second book, and it is very intriguing. And many of us in here, family members, he's actually written about that played some, you might think it insignificant, but played some key roles to the turning of world events that has allowed democracy to reign as it is. And with the historical parts that he's put in here, I would encourage everyone, just if you're not going to read the whole book, just go in and read just a few excerpts. You'll find it fascinating how we have played these key roles. So congratulations to the honorable former member of Parliament, Bob Richards, and his family for this launch.
Thank you. Any other member? Any other member? No other member? We'll move on. Thank you. The next item on the order paper this morning, matters of privilege. There are none. Question of explanations. There are none. Notice of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. There are none. Introduction of bills. There are 3 government bills to be introduced this morning. The first is it's a bill name of the Premier, but Minister of Transport, you're going to introduce it? Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I am introducing the following bill for its first reading so that it may be placed on the order paper for the next deal meeting, the Corporate Income Tax Agency Act 2024.
Thank you. Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I am introducing the following bill for its first reading so that it may be placed in the order paper for the next day of meeting, namely the Bermuda Hospital Board Amendment Act 2024.
Thank you. And Minister Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, I am introducing the following bill for its first reading so that it may be placed on the order paper for the next day of meeting, the Development and Planning Amendment Act 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no opposition bills, no private members bills, no notice of motions. Takes us to the orders of the day. Members, the order of the day has us addressing the second reading of the West End Development Corporation Amendment Act 2024 in the name of the Minister of Public Works. Minister?
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill entitled the West End Development Corporation Amendment Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Are there any objections? There none, continue, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I introduced a bill entitled the West End Development Corporation Amendment Act 2024. This bill seeks to provide for the transfer of the assets, liabilities, and functions of the Bermuda Land Development Company Limited to the West End Development Corporation, to amend the West End Development Corporation Act 1982 in consequence of the transfer, including by renaming the corporation as the Bermuda Land Management Corporation, to repeal the Baselands Development Act 1996, and to make consequential, transitional, and related provisions. Mr. Speaker, at the previous meeting of this Honorable House on Friday, June 28, 2024, I retold the history and provided a detailed rationale for this initiative. I explained how more than 20 years ago, in 2003, a report entitled Untangling Bermuda's Quangos, a review of Quangos in the Bermuda government, was produced by the then government. This report covered a wide range of topics, including the establishment and governance of each Quango at the time, its existing relevance, feasibility, effectiveness, levels of accountability to government, expenditure, income, whether the work could be more effectively or more efficiently carried out within government proper or by some other means. Mr. Speaker, that 2003 report and the subsequent Sage Commission report presented a decade later in 2013 both recommended a consolidation of government quangos that share similar functions. These recommendations were held in abeyance until this PLP administration took the decision early in our return to government in July 2017 to have another look at the reports and their recommendations with a view to actioning some of these items. This, Mr. Speaker, is what is being discussed today. The consolidation of two government quangos, namely the West End Development Corporation and the Bermuda Land Development Company, to create a single entity named the Bermuda Land Management Corporation, BLMC. Mr. Speaker, as stated previously, this bill seeks to provide for the statutory transfer of the assets, liabilities, and functions of the Bermuda Land Development Company Limited to the West End Development Corporation. So while this is not a true merger as defined by legal terms, because WEDCO is a statutory corporation and BLDC is a company incorporated under the Companies Act, for the sake of simplicity, we have been referring to this initiative as an amalgamation rather than a merger, and will continue to do so. With this said, I wish to give as much context about this bill prior to any questions being received during the committee stage. Mr. Speaker, as you can see, this bill renames the West End Development Corporation as the Bermuda Land Management Corporation. The reason for this is simple. The corporation is now managing land that is not solely in the West End. However, the corporation's function remains the same. That is to manage and develop the land with a view to the progressive improvement of the social and economic conditions obtaining there. Mr. Speaker, this bill does not amend the governance or the general management structure of the corporation, nor does it change the reporting and approval requirements to this Honorable House. For example, the tabling of the corporation's annual report must still occur, and all land dispositions, such as leases for over 21 years, still require approval from the legislature. Mr. Speaker, there are new powers given to the corporation based upon the functions of the soon-to-be dissolved BLDC, as set out in the Baselands Development Act 1996, which will be repealed. One significant difference relating to land holding is that BLDC holds a lease granted by government over the former baselands. This lease will be surrendered before the commencement of this bill, and government's title to the land will be subject to a statutory vesting in the Bermuda Land Management Corporation to align with the rest of the WEDCO lands. The BLMC will be empowered to make a leasehold disposition of land in the scheduled area, including the West End land as well as the former baselands, for a maximum term of 262 years. This is an increase from the maximum term of 120 years in line with the Baselands Development Act. Mr. Speaker, resulting from this bill and relating to this topic, there is a change to the Companies Act 1981. Because of the increase in the maximum length of time for which the corporation may grant a disposition of land by way of a leasehold interest, from 120 years to 262 years. If the BLMC wishes to grant a lease agreement to the maximum amount of time to a local company or exempt company with a physical presence in Bermuda, the company could not take such a lease because of the current constraint in the Companies Act that only allows companies to lease land up to 50 years for the purpose of its business. Certain longer leases are permitted for hotel residences, tourist accommodation, and residential units in the economic empowerment zones. This change would allow a company with a physical presence in Bermuda to lease land up to 262 years if an agreement is made with the BLMC and subject to the sanction of the Minister of Finance. Such a lease would also be subject to the approval of the legislature under the Principal Act. The Registrar of Companies has been consulted and is in agreement. Mr. Speaker, another new power of the corporation relating to land is that it will not need to seek planning permission to subdivide property. Section 35B1 of the Development and Planning Act 1974 requires that planning permission is obtained for any subdivision of land. Given that all land dispositions, including leases for over 21 years by the corporation, require legislative approval, there is no need for this added requirement, and the exception aligns with that given to the government in Section 35B2B of the Development and Planning Act 1974. Consultation with the Department of Planning did occur, and the department has no objections to this exemption. Mr. Speaker, honorable members may notice in the bill that a new power of the corporation relates to the provision of electronic communication services in accordance with an Integrated Communications Operating License, ICO. Currently, the BLDC holds a communications license with the regulatory authority granted under the Electronic Communications Act. To ensure all BLDC agreements can be honored, this new power formally allows the license to be transferred to the BLMC and further ensures that the corporation will be able to maintain the status quo. The RA has been consulted and are in agreement with this approach. Mr. Speaker, most importantly, and as I have said before, there will be no job losses resulting from this merger. Pre-merger and operating independently, WEDCO had a staff complement of 37 people and BLDC 28.
Just trying to get you to a good point where you can pause.
I can pause wherever you like, Mr.
Okay.
Speaker.
Well, we can pause now
Shall-
then, if that's the case.
Shall I move that we adjourn for lunch?
Yes,
and
Minister, that'd
return
be a
at
good thing to
2?
do at this time. Members, are there any objections to us rising for lunch? There are none. Minister, you can mark your
idea
spot right there. Members, we now stand adjourned until 2 p.m. Thank you.